Welcome back to the channel, you curd nerds. We are on episode 5 of the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge in Plain English. And honestly, I really hope you're learning something. I hope you're asking questions, because that's really how this whole flying thing happens safely. We ask questions, we learn stuff, we fly good, we don't suck. Now, whether your dream is to become an airline captain, backcountry bush pilot, charter pilot, or that legendary pilot that drops fish into the remote lakes in the mountains in Utah. Yeah, that's a real job. Look it up. USAjobs.gov, I think. The journey all starts at the same place as a student pilot, right? And honestly, I don't think we ever really stop being student pilots. A good pilot, they're always learning. But today we're going to zoom in on where that journey officially begins and what it looks like from the first day to check ride day. Now, first step, it's going to be picking a flight school. We already talked about that in the last episode, episode 4. I'll try to put a little doobie dangle somewhere up here, or if you're over on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, I'll try to put it down in the description. So I'm not really going to rehash that. But whether you're going the full-blown academy route, whether you're just training with your local CFI out of a grass strip or a sleepy little airport cafe, you're still going to need a student pilot certificate. And once you get that card in your hand, you might still be thinking, okay, now what? Well, we're going to answer all that today. So, getting your student pilot certificate. There are a couple different ways that you can get your student pilot certificate. You could technically go to your local FAA, FSDO, or Flight Standard District office and work with an inspector or technician. But given that our current federal budget funding, cut of funding, whatever you want to call it, good luck. Good luck going to your local FSDO and trying to get a appointment to get a student pilot certificate. You could also ask a designated pilot examiner, but again, those are pretty far and few between. Those are they're booked pretty far out. I've heard some people waiting 6 months for check rides at this point, so I don't really recommend that. What I do recommend, though, is finding a local flight instructor to help you out through your IACRA application. Now, to be eligible for a student pilot certificate, you need to be at least 16 years of age if you're going to be flying fixed wing, or 14 if you're going to be doing things like gliders and balloons, right? You need to be able to read, speak, and write and understand English, and you're going to fill out an application through IACRA, or the Integrated Airman Certification and Rating Application. It's really just a fancy FAA website that you are going to be married to for the rest of your aviation career. And just so you know, you don't have to wait until you're 16 to start flight training. You can start flight training the moment your feet can reach the rudder pedals and your eyeballs can see over the dash. Even if you need a little booster seat, you can start flight training. You just can't solo until you have that student pilot certificate in your hand. Now, the IACRA website, it's an online portal for pilot certification, and you will use this for every single rating and certificate for the rest of your career. Let me speak this very clearly. You will use this website for the rest of your life. So, set it up with a professional email address. None of this straight baller69@yomama.org, okay? None of that nonsense. I have made students make different email addresses because they are showing up with the absolutely horrendous name that they have kept on their freaking resume, that they have kept as their Xbox gamer tag since they were 13 signing up for it. All right, so try something simple. First name, last name, year you were born @gmail.com. Pretty straightforward. We ain't got to make it any more complicated than that. Unless you were born in 1969, then maybe choose something other than your birth year. Like the whole 1969, maybe. But once you've submitted your application, usually it takes about 2 to 4 weeks for your certificate to arrive in the mail. My advice, apply for it the moment you decide to start training. There really isn't any reason to wait. The pilot certificate, or the student pilot certificate, it doesn't expire. You could apply for it today if you have a CFI that's willing to help you through the application, and you could hold on to it for the rest of your life and technically never finish your training, never get another certificate. That student pilot certificate will still be valid. So apply for it the moment you start. Next step is going to be getting a medical certificate. Now, I always recommend students start working on their medical certificate the moment, again, they decide to start flight training, because no medical certificate, no solo. It's as simple as that. Sure, you could do things like basic med. There's a couple other options where you technically don't need a medical certificate, but if you want to be a career pilot, you need to get your medical certificate. Now, this is another big sticking point. Your instructor is not a doctor. Your instructor is not a medical professional, unless they are, but I haven't met a flight instructor that's also a doctor. So they don't need to know all of your medical history. Me as a CFI, I don't want to know all of your medical history. If you tell me something about your medical history that makes me say, hey, you shouldn't be flying, I have a duty to report it to the FAA. Sorry. I know it sucks. I've had to have students stop their training for a while because they were on some acne cream that had steroids in it. I didn't know about that. They didn't tell their AME, but the moment they told me about it, I had to stop flight training because they didn't meet the medical standards according to the FAA. It sucks. So if you've got an instructor that's digging and pressing about medical information, maybe go find a different flight instructor. But asking your flight instructor, hey, I've had X, Y, and Z in my life. Can I get a medical certificate? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I know how to fly airplanes. I'm nothing more than a flight instructor. So if you do have anything that might bring up some concern, mental health history, past surgeries, prescriptions, anything that might cause the FAA to go, maybe not. Don't fill out the MedExpress just yet. Get a consultation with an AME or an aviation medical examiner first. Talk to them. See what the process might be. See if you are going to be deferred. A lot of times these consultations, they're a couple $100 at the most. And I mean, you're about to go drop $15,000 on private pilot certificate at a minimum. A couple $100 to make sure that you're going to get your medical certificate is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. So if you've got something of concern, and when I say something of concern, I have seen people go through dang near 3 years of fighting the FAA for a medical certificate because they went to the emergency room in like their early 20s because they drank too many Red Bulls and their heart felt a little funny. So they stayed overnight, got an IV drip, and got monitored. That was it. It was the whole thing. Took them 3 years to get a medical certificate. And that happened 20 years ago. So get a consultation if you've got any concerns. Your instructor isn't the deciding factor. You don't really need to discuss your entire medical history with them. Good luck on getting a medical. Now, once you've got your medical, you've got your student pilot certificate, you've gone through a bunch of training, and now your instructor says, you fly good and you don't suck. It's time to solo. Now, solo is exactly what it means. It's exactly what it sounds like. You are the only occupant of that aircraft. You ain't flying with your dog, your cat, your gerbil, your grandma, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your grand niece, your nothing. Ain't nobody else in that aircraft but you. You hear me? Solo means solo. All right. Awesome. Now, that first lap in the pattern, that first solo flight, it's going to be awesome. Just be aware that you've probably been flying with an extra 200 pounds in the other seat this entire time. So that airplane's going to come off the ground real quick. So just keep that in mind. I remember my first solo, my instructor told me go fly 3 laps in the pattern. I got so excited, I lost count, flew 4. But before you go solo, you are going to have to meet some basic requirements, which are all laid out in 6187. We can all look that up together. 6187. It's the things just demonstrate proficiency in takeoffs, landings, pattern work, proper radio communication, pre-solo, written test, and a couple other maneuvers. And you need to receive a specific endorsement from your CFI saying that you can fly here. Not there, not there, not with your grandma, not with your grandniece, not with your uncle, not with your brother, not with your sister, not with your girlfriend, boyfriend, gerbil, cat, dog. Solo here. Just I want to make sure that's entirely clear. Some people get real confused thinking a solo endorsement means that they are cleared to go do whatever they want, but it's not. Soloing, though, it's a huge confidence booster, but it is not the end. It's just the beginning of the next phase of training. So what comes after solo? After solo, most instructors are going to continue building on that momentum. You'll likely start working on short field and soft field landings, cross country, flight planning, and execution, basic navigation, VFR charts, diversions, weather briefings, couple more emergencies. And how this plays out really depends on your training program and your goals. Some students are going to fly more solo flights locally to help build confidence. Others are going to jump right into cross-country training. It really all depends on your budget and what your plans are. If you just want to have fun, if you're just doing this for the joy of it, and you want to get more comfortable before you continue on with your training, go fly a bunch of solo flights. There's a couple other endorsements that you can get from your instructor that will allow you to go to different airports and go see and go do other things. You just got to stay usually within 25 to 50 miles, depending on the endorsement, depending on your instructor, etc. But if you're really just trying to get it done, knock out that solo, jump right into cross-country planning, cross-country procedures, and short field and soft field takeoffs and landings. And in no time, you'll be ready for your check ride. But before you go take that check ride, you've got some ground school and written test requirements. So flight training, it's not all about kicking rudders, pulling yokes, flipping switches, pushing levers and whatnot. You also need to know the why about what you're doing. Now, the FAA knowledge test, or the written is what most people are going to call it, is, I'm going to go off script a little bit. It sucks. Like there's no other way to put it. The FAA written knowledge evaluations suck. Studying for them by reading Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge and your POH and the FAR aim and whatnot, it's gonna be rough. I ain't never seen a student pass by studying just the FAA's documentation. What I recommend all of my students is, for private pilot, go to Gleim, Gleim, or Golf Lima Echo India Mike. They make study material, again, not sponsored at all. This is just what I recommend to my students. They put out great study material for the written tests for private pilot. Sheppard Air is what I recommend for anything beyond that. Sheppard Air used to do private pilot, but since Sheppard Air has a 100% money back guarantee, they were losing money because a bunch of private pilots were failing because they weren't studying appropriately. Because Sheppard Air has like a whole system where it's like, you're going to study this way and this is the only way that's going to work because we have psychologists and all this other stuff. It's actually pretty good, and it's like $100, right? It's well worth the money, and you will pass your written. The only written I ever failed was the only written I didn't study Sheppard Air for. It works. I don't know what voodoo magic they're putting into it, but it works. Now, when you do go and find like Sheppard Air, if you are working on something beyond private pilot, it's going to look like you're on the wrong website. It's the right place. It's the right place. Now, some instructors will say things like, I don't do ground school. I'm a flight instructor, not a ground instructor. So if you want to learn how to wiggle sticks, kick rudders, and flip switches, I'll teach you that. But all that ground foo-foo nonsense, nah, go to King's School for that. Do I agree with this? God, no. Of course I don't agree with this. But I also recognize that everybody's got a budget. And the cheapest I have seen ground instruction recently is $65 an hour. So I understand that everybody's out here trying to find a way to get this stuff done cheaper. So there's things like Sporties, King's School, Pilot Institute is pretty solid. Try to put a link down below for them. These are all ground schools that meet the requirements that the FAA puts out for that knowledge portion of training, right? They teach you about performance. They teach you about weather. They teach you about cross-country planning. They teach you about aerodynamics. And when you go through these courses, they will actually give you a little certificate at the end saying you have met the requirements that the FAA has put out for the ground portion of training, so that your instructor really just has to do a little bit of quizzing, might charge you an hour, 2 hours of training just to make sure that you actually learned something from these ground schools and you didn't just click next and select C and hope that you pass, right? Now, After you've gone through your ground school, after you've studied for your written, when should you even take your written? Some instructors, again, say you need to have your written done before ever stepping foot in an airplane. Again, I don't really agree with this because, again, I think it splits the knowledge and skills portion of your training too much. I think that you should be doing ground school and studying for your written concurrently with your flight training, which is why I recommend that if you've got the money for it, just do your ground training with a flight instructor that's good at ground training. And I recommend taking your written test as you're wrapping up the solo cross-country flights portion, because at that point, you've got some context. You've seen some different airports. The stuff that you're studying and looking at will actually mean something. If you try and do all the studying and ground school and whatnot before you ever actually get into an airplane, it's like trying to learn how to paint by reading a book and never touching a paintbrush. It ain't gonna work. It's gonna suck. You're gonna be looking at this book going like, angle of what? Why are we attacking the airplane? The fuck is an aileron? Pardon my French, sorry. I'll try to put a beep in there. Now getting ready for your check ride. So once you've gotten all your hours, mastered all your maneuvers, passed your knowledge test, and your instructor says you fly real good and you don't suck, it's time to prepare for your practical test or your check ride. This means you're going to be doing all those required maneuvers, emergency procedures, cover your regulations, weather, and even talking about your own weaknesses. Now, I do mock check rides with my students to make sure that they are solid. I'm not there to boost their ego. I am there to make sure that they can handle an airplane safely. I tell all of my students, I don't care about you. I have no interest in your personal life, ego, or experience. What I do care about is whether or not you are going to negatively impact my pass rate and whether or not I'm going to be dragged in front of an NTSB hearing because you screwed up. Now, obviously, this is a joke. Like, I like my students. Most of my students have been pretty great, and I actually do care about them and like them. But if you tell them like, hey, I don't care about you. Like, I only care on whether or not you're going to meet these metrics. This has no like friendliness involved in it. And you're still willing to sign them off. I don't know. I feel like it works, right? Instead of them thinking, oh, well, what if I wasn't ready? What if my instructor's just trying to be nice to me? Well, what if this, what if that? But if you tell them like, hey man, I'm just here to make sure that you're going to pass. No emotional investment at all. Now, a private pilot certificate is often described as a license to learn. And while that is true, you should not be learning basic things after you get your private pilot certificate. When you go in for your check ride, you should be able to accomplish all of those maneuvers. You should have a solid basis of aeronautical decision making, and you should know how to respond to emergencies. Remember, fires don't wait for checklists. That's what training is for. Now, what are you going to bring to your check ride? I recommend get a binder, get a folder, get something to put all these documents together. You're going to have an 8710 or your IACRA application signed by you and your instructor. I recommend printing them out because, IACRA fails every once in a while or IACRA goes down. So print them out so that the DPE's got them on hand. Your knowledge test results. Now, sure, 80% is passing, but that means 20% of that written is going to be recovered on your check ride. All right. You're also going to need your medical certificate, your student pilot certificate, your logbook with all your endorsements. You're going to reference Advisory Circular 61, 65. I think it's hotel now. Might be something newer. Either way, it's Advisory Circular 61, 65. Any graduation certificates from any ground school programs and your aircraft documentation. This is going to be including your airworthiness certificate, your registration, your operating limitations, whether it be your POH or your aircraft flight manual. Your equipment list, your weight and balance, your maintenance records, your airworthiness directives compliances, right? Pro tip, if you're going to bring your own aircraft, bring the maintenance logbook. I almost had to cancel my seaplane check ride because I didn't bring my maintenance logbook with me. All of my other check rides that I had taken had been part of flight schools, and the DPEs I had worked with, they knew the flight schools. They were like, oh yeah, airplane's airworthy, solid. So I didn't think anything of it. So when I go to my seaplane check ride and I'm like, hey, I'm here, I'm ready to go. And the examiner's like, okay, well, let's check and make sure that the airplane's airworthy. I was like, oh, it is. I checked it, before I left. Like me and my mechanic do all the maintenance on it together, so I know it's airworthy. He's like, well, I don't know that. I'm like, oh, what are we gonna do about that? He's like, I don't know, but the check ride fee is $800. What do you want to do about it? So I had my wife send me a bunch of pictures of the maintenance logbook, so I could be like, look, here it is. Like, there's the annual, there's the airworthiness directives, there's the blah, 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 blah. So I was good. Took the check ride, but just bring the book, okay? Just bring the maintenance book. Now, what's actually going to be on your check ride? Everything that's going to be on your check ride is going to be laid out in the Airman Certification Standards, or the ACS. It's all there. The maneuvers, the tolerances, the knowledge areas, the oral exam is based on it. The flight portion is based on it. I wouldn't crack it open on day one. It could definitely be intimidating for new pilots. After your solo, sure, start going through it. I know when I looked at the ACS, I had like maybe 6 hours in the airplane. I guess back then it was the PTS, but when I looked at the ACS, I had like 6 hours, and I was like, you mean I need to land an airplane within 200 feet? Oh, I could barely maintain altitude within 200 feet. I need to get on pavement within 200 feet. How am I ever going to do that? Obviously, that's I accomplished it, and I do pretty good now. I feel like I'm definitely within like 5 to 10 feet of my intended touchdown point almost every time. But just so you don't get intimidated, kind of like sticker shock and whatnot, just leave the ACS until you get done with your solo stuff, right? Now, who gives a check ride? Designated pilot examiners are the most common. You could technically go through your local FSDO for free, but again, good luck getting that scheduled. If you're part of a 141 school with examining authority, a check pilot is probably going to give you your check ride. Now, if you are going to go through a DPE, they are going to charge you anywhere between $500 and $1,500 for a check ride, and that does not include aircraft rental. Okay, check rides are expensive. My multi-engine instructor check ride cost me $800. My seaplane check ride cost me $1,500. So it really just depends on what rating you're going for, what check ride, where you're at. I've heard some people spend $1,200 for private pilot in California. I've heard some people spend $600 for private pilot up here in Wisconsin. Now, passing the check ride. Once you pass your check ride, the examiner is going to print you out a temporary certificate right there at the table. And congratulations, you are now a private pilot with all the privileges and limitations that come with it. Now, try to keep the happy tears inside, because it's a little embarrassing if you get your temporary pilot certificate all wet with tears of happiness. So at least make it out to the car before you start bawling like a baby back bit, before you start crying, right? I know when I passed my check ride, like I called my grandma and I'm like, Grandma, I'm a pilot now. I got my pilot's license. She's like, oh my God. Yeah, either way. So that's it for chapter 1, right? So far in the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, we've covered the history of aviation, the role of the FAA, how to pick a flight school, and now the journey from your first lesson to a fully fledged pilot. Next up is going to be aeronautical decision making, where we're going to dive into how to develop your own personal minimums, avoid dumb decisions, fly smarter, not just safer. If this does sound helpful to you and you want to help out the channel, make sure, drop a like, hit subscribe, slam that bell icon so you can get notified every time we come out with a new episode. And say it with me, fly safe and keep it cheesy.